Hello and welcome back to Just Good Game News. Hopefully you've been following along for the last few weeks. This is episode 13, which is incredible to be able to say. And speaking of being able to speak, my voice insists on struggling a little bit. I've fought off 2 different colds in the last week or so, and we'll see how we go. I'm projecting I'm going for it, but I feel like it always happens this time of year, and it wouldn't be me if I didn't get randomly infected, whether it's my child getting sent home early from nursery, or whether I just get something out and about in the cold winds that are the United Kingdom right now. But again, a massive thank you to you for joining me for this episode of the Just Good Game News. We have a ton of different subjects to get stuck into, loads of different topics, whether they are breaking news, tips and tricks, different spotlights on different video games, overlooked or brand new, etc. I want to talk about Dispatch, so there's many different things that we will get to. First up, the news. First up then, the breaking Feelgoods, the breaking news that makes you feel good. Crash Bandicoot is coming to Netflix. Now, of all the places I thought the orange marsupial would end up, I did not expect him to be on Netflix, but this comes from a website called What's on Netflix, who apparently have a bunch of insider sources, and speaking to them, they got the information that the Crash Bandicoot animated show is making its way to Netflix. Now, this makes sense in regards to the push that Netflix has made into adapting all sorts of different video game properties over the years. You know, you've got the new Splinter Cell Death Watch show, Sonic Prime, Devil May Cry, Tomb Raider, Castlevania, which I would recommend Castlevania, by the way. That's my favorite of the whole bunch. Netflix are realizing what Hollywood is also realizing, that video game adaptations are the new comic book adaptations, and it seems like they're trying to do as many of them as possible. And so, you know, Crash has had a weird few years. Like, Crash Team Rumble did not do very well. That was their Activision's attempt at some infinite live service Smash Brothers type thing that would continue to fleece the fan base for as long as possible. I feel like no one played that. And to me, the last time Crash was on top was Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, which is a phenomenal game. Truly, truly incredible. A completely worthy successor to Naughty Dog's run on the original games, and I would still recommend that today. And you know, and when it comes to a Crash Bandicoot animation, I am curious whether they go down the 2D route, the 3D, whether you pull from the era of like Twin Sanity, or whether you go down the newer route. You know, Crash 4 was a return to the old school. There's a lot of different things that they can pull from, and I'm also curious whether or not Crash speaks, because we've had different versions of Crash Bandicoot over the years as well. And as What's on Netflix note in their article, you know, we did have the version in the Skylanders show.
Crash Bandicoot. Last thing I remember, I was on the Wampa Islands and about to free my friend Tawna from the clutches of the evil Dr. Neocortex.
Which was a strange time when Crash Bandicoot was in Skylanders, so hopefully it'll be a bit better than that. Next up, super easy to miss, because I completely did by a couple of days, but a free-to-play version of Battlefield 6 has dropped a spin-off from Battlefield 6 called Battlefield Redsec, which is ostensibly EA's version of trying to tackle Call of Duty Warzone, a free-to-play battle royale take on Battlefield 6, seemingly inspired by Battlefield 5's Firestorm mode, which was, you know, DOA on launch. That thing didn't launch until March 2019, even though the game came out in November 2018, and Battlefield 5 didn't go down very well with fans anyway, so by the time their battle royale got added on, it just wasn't played very much. Redsec has immediately seen record numbers in terms of its day one player count, and it's absolutely flying. And it's cool just to have a free-to-play version of Battlefield 6's gameplay, because if you've followed the reviews, or maybe you've played little bits of the alpha and stuff around Battlefield 6, it is one of the best playing Battlefields, like, in the entire series. And I think it's just worth shouting out that if you look on your, you know, the PlayStation or the Xbox storefront and you see Battlefield trending, that's why. That's what Redsec is. It's a free-to-play battle royale, and maybe go and give it a go. Next up, it seems like Chrono Trigger might finally be getting some sort of official announcement in regards to a remaster or a remake. Yes, I am reading the tea leaves and I'm constructing an entire tea tree myself, but we do have an official announcement from Square Enix saying that they'll be putting an orchestra together at the end of the 30th year anniversary celebrations, which brings it into March 2026. There's going to be an orchestral performance of various different songs from the Chrono Trigger soundtrack in Tokyo next year. And it's worth mentioning that, you know, the way that the Japanese companies tend to approach anniversaries is that the entire year is reserved for celebrations. It's what Nintendo just did with Mario's anniversary, and it seems to be what Square Enix are doing with Chrono Trigger, because the 30th anniversary, if you go the way that Westerners tend to do it, was March 2025. Obviously, we've already passed that, but Square Enix have done a few different tie-ins to Chrono Trigger across the year, and they've now announced this big orchestral performance for March 2026. So, fingers crossed. I don't see why we live in a world where we can have Final Fantasy Pixel remasters and and a remade version of Live Alive, but we can't get Chrono Trigger available on a modern system. I don't know what licensing fees have to, be crossed over, what bag of money has to be left somewhere while someone else goes, hey, have you seen that? I don't know why this doesn't come true. Chrono Trigger is easily, arguably the most single, legendary JRPG in gaming history, considering the insane amount of talent that took part in making it. Whether it's Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, whether it's, the legendary artist Akira Toriyama, Nobu Uematsu on the score, it was a real meeting of complete geniuses at arguably the height of all of their powers in the middle of the 90s. And they created a phenomenal JRPG that is just not available on modern systems. Now, maybe if we all cross the fingers, this will actually finally come true, but it's a step in the right direction. Next, I occasionally throw in, business-related stuff, things that'll just make you smile in regards to the way the gaming industry is going. And I wanted to point out that, multiverses, you might remember that, maybe you remember Warner Brothers' disastrous handling of multiverses. I talked about it last week because we were covering the ongoing, selling of Warner Brothers' gaming division. And part of that was, the discussion around how mishandled multiverses was, which was Warner Brothers' attempt at a Smash Brothers clone as well. And it initially was received very well. They then took it offline. They added a whole bunch of microtransactions and an increased grind. And by the time they re-released it, all the existing fans, some of their currencies didn't transfer over. It was a whole thing. And sadly, the game was completely shut down, and the developers, all of their time was honestly pretty wasted. That team of individuals has left Warner Brothers to form Airlock Games, and they've announced their first game, which is, funnily enough, a 16-bit throwback to assumedly what they grew up playing, called What the Stars Forgot. It seems like it's a bit of a horror-type game, 16-bit horror, very Super Nintendo, very early 90s, but I love seeing this. They specifically cite, the conditions around making a big-budget AAA game as what made them want to get the hell away from it, which I can't blame them, to be honest. I wouldn't be sitting here doing the Just Good Game news as part of the Just Good Game show if I also was able to be comfortable in a more corporate scenario. That stuff made me run for the hills as well. And so I'm just kind of proud of them. I think it's cool to see, and I want more of this from big studios that are forever mishandled by big cack-handed CEOs. I would rather they break away and do what speaks to them. And I just love that they've gone from multiverses, Smash Brothers clone, Warner Brothers, all the money thrown at it in the world, through to let's just make a 16-bit game to remember why the hell we enjoy making games in the first place. Lastly, Baldur's Gate 3 is hopefully on the way to Nintendo Switch 2. This comes from reputable leaker, arguably the most reputable leaker in the game right now, Nate the Hate, the guy that leaked the Switch 2's trailer date before it was officially put out by Nintendo. He was asked over on social media about the reality of Baldur's Gate. Well, he was being asked about Red Dead Redemption 2, which has been something that I've reported on across the last few weeks, because Nate just doesn't seem to be wrong, even though obviously the various machinations of bringing a game to launch can get in the way of certain leaks pointing at certain dates. He was being asked about Red Dead Redemption 2, the remaster of that game, what's happening with that. He said he didn't have an update on it, but he did think that Baldur's Gate 3 was on its way to Switch 2, and he would have to look into it, but he would have more information soon. So I'm only including this because of the dude's history, and so far he's been bang on, especially across 2025. So we'll see. Baldur's Gate 3 feels like one of the most impossible to make work on a handheld things ever, but Larian did eventually pull it together for the Xbox Series S, and Nintendo Switch 2, obviously it's a ways off the Series S, but still, miracles have happened. Star Wars Outlaws looks absolutely incredible on the Switch 2, and if the developers are given enough time, it seems like they can, bring anything together. Baldur's Gate 3 remains one of the single most impressive titles of the 2020s, and I would recommend it wholeheartedly regardless of what platform you play it on. But getting that on the go, getting that in the bed, on the toilet, I would love that. That would be a lovely, lovely time. Shout out to everybody who is currently fighting a cold, or a head cold, a flu, a blocked nose, a hot head. I'm with you. I see you. I feel you, to be honest. All around here. Next up, the game spotlight, and I want to shine the spotlight on Dispatch, a game that you've probably seen trending over on the various top 10s and all the different storefronts. It's framed around superheroes, which, I am as sick of superheroes as the next person. However, I think if it's done well, it can still punch through. And the thing here is that you're going for a whole adult animation tone. It is very like Invincible. There are elements of Suicide Squad and The Boys in here. It reminds me of, there's a lot of martial arts and choreography in here as well. But ultimately, you are playing as a dispatcher. You are someone who used to be a legend in the game. You used to be this individual called Mecha Man, and one of your missions goes wrong, and you end up as a dispatcher. In terms of like a literal police on-call dispatch, sending these different superheroes to all these different crimes and monitoring your relationships with them. A super cool game made by ex-Telltale developers who, to me, have completely reminded me and recaptured the magic of 2012's The Walking Dead rollout. You know, when Telltale was a massive deal right at the beginning of the 2010s, it felt like everybody was playing The Walking Dead season 1, and the rollout of those episodes meant that you had all those ongoing conversations week to week, like you do with a good TV show. But people talking about the different choices they were making in the story and looking forward to the next development in regards to the characters or what was going to happen, that kind of thing. It's taken a little while. You know, everything that happened with Telltale, the studio went under, you know, the various different bits of sales data proved that only really the very first season of The Walking Dead sold well for them. You know, they would go on to make Game of Thrones and Back to the Future and Jurassic Park and all sorts of different stuff, and none of it did as well as sales-wise anyway, as The Walking Dead Season 1. I will talk about Batman Telltale in a bit, because that game's on sale at the minute. Anyway, it's taken a good long while for those developers to be able to put a real mark of quality on something and then have the sales data back it up. But Dispatch is selling very well with the Telltale signature, you know, choosing your way through different dialogue options. The cast, though, is absolutely stacked. Like, the main dude that you play as, Robert, is played by Aaron Paul, like, you know, Breaking Bad's Jesse. Which is the thing that made me turn my head in the first place anyway. I feel like that dude deserves another major role. And, you know, using BoJack Horseman, like he's had some projects, but it's great to see him leading something again. And what you have here is really great choreography when it comes to the fight scenes and lots of choices to make on a pure gameplay side. You know, if you were going to pie chart it, you have 2/3 narrative, you know, cutscenes with quick time events, and then 1/3 of actual managing your specific group, like sending out these different superheroes to respond to different crimes, trying to play to their strengths, and adapting to the crimes as they play out. Like, you might end up getting like a variable that happens halfway through, like you're trying to stop a robbery and all of a sudden they pull guns and they take some hostages. What do you then want to do? It's all handled through the dispatch interface, as if you were using the computer itself, but it's easily the most gameplay that a Telltale game has had alongside the story side of things. And it is the character writing and the overall presentation that is just so immediate, just so well handled. Like I said, it's made by a bunch of ex-Telltale devs. It's in collaboration with Critical Role, who are obviously a major force in YouTube in themselves. And like I mentioned, the cast overall is absolutely stacked. Aaron Paul leading the thing. But also there's a few YouTubers in here. Moist Critical / Charlie is one of the dudes that you can get on your squad. He's like a bat called Sonar, and he's like this chill bat who's just hanging out, making coffee and eating cereal. And I just think that it has all of the elements together to make a big splash. And so far, it seems to be getting on people's radars. But again, it's that rollout, that signature Telltale thing that I miss, where all of us are taking part in a week-to-week story, and how much fun that is to watch unfold. The first 2 episodes are exemplary so far. The only thing to point out, which I've seen some people say is a negative, to me it's a positive, is that the actual length of the episodes are only about 20 minutes. To me, that's perfect. That's just like an episode of an anime or a TV show, whatever. So I really like that, and you can get through them, look forward to the next one. I've missed that so much, and I'm so glad that they're doing it again.
Before I go any further, I'm going to have to plug some stuff over on the patreon.com/Tailford. You can get access to the Just Good Game Show early, ad-free, on a special RSS feed. I've reduced the tiers down, so now we have the Helping Hand donation tier at £3 a month. You can get early access, like I said, to the Just Good Game Show for £5 a month, as well as a Patreon-exclusive podcast called The Man Who Stares at Goats, which is just an excuse to revisit the greatest games of all time. Every single month, you can play along, you can submit your own talking points and questions, etc. around those games, and we just celebrate something every single month. But if you would like the full version of the Just Good Game experience, that is the Just Good Game Show, as the news itself is taken from that show. You can access the whole thing, like I said, over on Patreon, over on your podcast feed of choice.
Next up, the overlooked games of the week. They can be new or old. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever you would like to shout out down in the comments, a game that you feel didn't get its flowers back in the day, so anything that you would like to mention. And we have Gracious Rhino over on the Discord mentioning Boktai, a completely hidden gem in regards to something that Hideo Kojima made. A really cool Game Boy Advance game where you had to actually charge the cartridge itself using sunlight through a solar panel to fight the vampires and different enemies that are in the game, to charge your weapons. Like, only Kojima could have thought of that. It is such a cool idea. one of the criticisms back in the day was that you literally couldn't fight certain bosses, or at least it would be them a hell of a lot harder to fight certain bosses if you didn't do it during the day with sunlight on your side, which I just love that idea. Even though, it could be really annoying on a GBA to not be able to save at a decent enough place and have to come back way later to try and do the same fight again if you ended up there, on a late night session or something. Gracious Rhino also pointed out, the game was practically impossible to finish in the north of England as the sun never shines here, and you had to wait for a sunny day to fight a boss, otherwise you would die. I've never played Boktai. I have heard of it and I have seen it, and when you look back at gameplay footage for it, what an absolutely gorgeous style. There were 3 games in the series, but only the first one I think was a lot more hands-on in regards to Kojima designing the overall concept. Just a cool idea. And more stuff like this, man. More stuff like this. Seaport's David3981 recommends Tenchu Z. Now, oh god, sometimes people mention a game and I'm like, oh my god, I lived on that. I absolutely loved that thing. Tenchu Z or Tenchu Z or whatever the hell we want to call it, was a title that wasn't received very well when it first dropped. It didn't review very well. It was coming off Tenchu Wrath of Heaven, which is one of the best stealth ninja games of all time, like varied characters in that game, different infiltration methods, everything else. And Tenchu Z was an attempt to take that stealth-based gameplay and make it more multiplayer, make it so that you and a friend can infiltrate different bases together. It also added some customization to your character, and that was the big sell. It was multiplayer Tenchu, and it just didn't run very well. It didn't sell very well. I loved it though, because I was always a sucker, and I'm still a sucker for stealth-based gameplay. And I also love the customization that you could do in the game. Like, I always love, I should really look up the name for them, but those really cool big hats that you can get in like old school Japanese games. There's a nice variety of hats in Tenchu Z. But the actual kills and the stealth gameplay was close enough to Wrath of Heaven for me, where I was still enjoying infiltrating these various compounds, getting up onto rooftops, doing the stealth kills, taking out guards one by one, just slowly getting through everything and getting the highest rank possible per mission. So I would say, even though, yes, it didn't sell very well, and I'm sure when I start putting the gameplay in the video version of this, it might not look great, but I must have put about, God, endless months and months and months of time into Tenchu Z, getting the highest gold rank possible on every single mission. I absolutely love this thing. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you're a Tenchu fan, we've not had a Tenchu in forever, but Tenchu Z was a weird place to leave off. Actually, I will throw in, if you're a Tenchu fan and you're wondering what the hell happened to the series, a lot of the developers left to form their own spin-off series called Shinobido. There are 2 Shinobido games. One of them is on PlayStation 2 and the other one's on PlayStation Vita, which, the one that was released on PS2 was right at the end of that game, of the console's generation, so hardly anybody even noticed it. And the other one was on the PS Vita, which is one of the most ill-fated consoles in gaming history, even though I love the thing. But yeah, I'll chuck some footage of Shinobido on screen as well. Like, that very much scratches the old Tenchu itch, even though sadly it's not as widely available and will likely never be as widely available as the likes of Tenchu. Lastly, Noel recommends Astral Chain. What a beautiful selection of games we have this week. Astral Chain may be the most overlooked, Nintendo Switch exclusive ever, made by Platinum Games just before Platinum would kind of lose their mind and start chasing things like Babylon's Fall and all those weird side projects. It was also just after they had the TMNT game cancelled, the Transformers game was delisted. Like, there was a time when Platinum was saying yes to as many projects as possible, and it wasn't working out very well. However, Astral Chain is a sublime title. I'm yet to play it on Switch too to see if it touches up the frame rate anymore. As Noel says, a gorgeous anime cyberpunk setting, controlling creatures called legions in an awesome hack and slash adventure from the masters of Platinum Games. The whole thing with this game, it had movement on the left stick, but you were controlling these legions, these summonable creatures with the right stick, and the Astral Chain itself bound the two of you together, so you could do these different moves where if an enemy is charging at you, you can make the chain more taut, catch them and fling them back. You can also ensnare enemies by guiding your dude like around the enemy itself. Something that they've never really tried to expand upon. I don't know if Astral Chain even sold well enough to if the conversation ever came around for a sequel, but it just had so many cool ideas. And as Noel says, the overall presentation was this anime focused like cell shaded kind of look, and it was just so immediate. It's such a great game to this day to play, whether you're on Switch 1 or Switch 2. One of those heartily recommendable games that you just wish more people had noticed when it first came out. Next up, 3 game deals, and 3 game deals if you know what I'm saying, and I apologize to anyone in the comments who doesn't know what I'm on about. It is a stupid English language joke where the subject of the phrase is either the game, the 3 game deals, or 3 game deals. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? As it's a thing, I need to find another way to do this section, or I just keep running with it until until we all get sick of it. Anyway, 3 game deals for this week. Vanquish, the immaculate Vanquish, is on sale for £4.99 until the 5th of November over on PlayStation. If you haven't played Vanquish, oh my god, consider it a gift from me to you. A sublime third-person action shooter inspired by Gears of War. But again, it's by Platinum Games, you know, them injecting their own stylish action focus into that genre, where you do have, you know, you're taking cover, you're taking on all these different enemies, you're using a variety of weapons, but you also have these really over-the-top boss fights and these boost mechanics and slow motion, where you're, you know, sliding around the entire arena, taking out dudes, shattering all these different mechanoid enemies into all these different parts with sparks flying everywhere. It's such a great, immediately satisfying game with really fun, over-the-top anime dialogue and a really ridiculous premise is the word my brain wanted to say, of like this interstellar war between the US and Russia and whatever. Vanquish is just one of those chef's kiss kind of games that everybody should play at least once in their lives. Next deal is Batman, the Telltale series, on sale for £7.99 until the 5th of November as well. I think all 3 of my deals this week are from PlayStation. I'm lying to you, it's £4.99. That's what I get for not double checking my notes as I try to remember all sorts of different numbers and dates and prices. Batman Telltale series Season 1 is on sale for £4.99 until the 7th of November. That's what I should have said before. But, you know, we talked about just before the idea of the way Telltale's sales went across the 2010s, the fact that they said yes to so many different IPs, and you know, the fact that they couldn't really top the original Walking Dead. The quality was there, though. Just because the games weren't selling, but didn't mean the quality wasn't there. I really enjoyed the Game of Thrones game. The Wolf Among Us was awesome, but Batman Telltale is spectacular. Mainly because it's the only Batman game that really nails that feel of being Bruce Wayne and Batman, where, like, yes, it is a linear story, but you do have a lot of dialogue options to make, you know, all these different scenes that you're playing out as Bruce Wayne, going to the parties, going to the galas, talking to these different people, you know, in terms of, you know, trying to keep up appearances kind of thing. But then occasionally you'll have to interact with someone like a Carmine Falcone as Bruce Wayne, but you're talking to him, saying things, you know, talking about justice, talking about, you know, like he might have to have some comeuppance or whatever it is, you knowing that you're going to revisit him as Batman or something else is going to happen. And once you're back in the suit and you start doing the more crime investigatory parts of the game, you get to embody that side of Bruce's psyche as well. It was that side of it that made me absolutely love Telltale's approach to doing this. I think the story itself is awesome. It takes a major swing with Batman lore, which if you don't know, I'll actually not spoil it because it's a really great way for the first episode to end. A really great thing to play through. And the last game that is on sale for a ridiculously low amount of money is Doom 2016, down to £3.19 until the 5th of November. I recently just went back through this after finishing Doom the Dark Ages a few months ago, because I didn't really vibe with Doom the Dark Ages too much, but I wanted to go back to Doom 2016 just because everything about Dark Ages reminded me of how much I wanted to go back through the reboot of Doom from 2016, or the soft reboot, and just what an exemplary game. We talk about those essential titles that everyone should play. You know, we talk about those greatest of all time games. Something like Doom 2016 might have to be one of the goats that I stare at in the Patreon exclusive greatest of all time podcast series that is ongoing. We just did Metal Gear Solid for October's game, but Doom 2016 just plays so well. I feel like if you play it on modern hardware, you play it on PlayStation now, it's been patched up so much. Like, it runs so well, and the gameplay feel is just so pure. Like, you know, it takes just enough from the old school arena based Dooms and then the more modern sensibilities of that immediacy when it comes to gameplay feel. The different finishes that you can do on enemies, the power-ups that you can get. It's not afraid to be a video game. It's not afraid to be an old-school video game in the modern day. And it's one of my favorite things. That's one of my favorite combos in gaming. You also have Mick Gordon absolutely going for it on the score. You know, that dude would only sadly leave Doom over time. But everybody involved is absolutely firing on all cylinders. It's one of the most perfect games you can play. Next up, some tips and tricks for... Usually I'll try and hit a game that everyone's playing through, which is why we're going to talk about Pokemon ZA, a game that I put off picking up initially because of the kind of the mixed response to how it was. There was like the technical problems and other people saying it was great and whatever, and then I went through my whole debacle with the PlayStation Portal, which I talked about last week on the wider audio show, and I was like, I now have a voucher to spend on something, so let me buy Pokemon ZA. It's pretty damn good, to be honest. I like it a lot, and so I thought I'd throw some tips together for that, mainly because I feel like the game drastically undersells the intricacies of its combat. Now, we're not talking talking about some, phenomenally in-depth thing here, but there is a lot more to it than, the standard turn-based model that Pokemon has had since 1995. And so, because you are dealing with, this is more for newcomers like myself. Like I've only had the game for like a week or so. And so if you're on the fence for ZA, you're wondering about the specifics of the combat and you're looking at all of the cooldowns and the MMO style combat and thinking, well, what's actually so different about that? I'm just pushing a button and attacking something. You are, but because we're now dealing with a real 3D space in real time, those are two different Pokemon there, as my fingers. And we're dealing with a 3D space and Pokemon running around each other, then range and distance and dodging, all that stuff kind of matters. So it's like the game does tell you that you can dodge roll and you want to get out the way of different enemy Pokemon attacks, but if you're locked on, that won't work. So one, you want to feather the lock on. You want to make sure you're barely locking on unless you're ready to unleash an attack. You can then get the hell out the way. Your Pokemon will stay with you and you can then dodge more attacks as you run around the enemy together. Second, I find quick attack to be an absolute godsend. Like quick attack has always been a fun thing to have in Pokemon history anyway, but because the games were fundamentally turn-based, it didn't really do a whole lot. Here, quick attack will interrupt an enemy's animation. That's another cool thing about ZA's combat, is that casting time is a thing. And if you're doing quick attack, it is obviously one of the fastest attacks in the game, and you can just finish off a boss, an enemy, whatever, faster than they can do whatever move they are charging up to hit you instead. The game also skimps out on really telling you how to use items in battle. Now, it's kind of straightforward, but I didn't realize this for a good few fights. You just have to push X on Switch. You just push the menu button as you normally would. However, if you're in combat, it classes it as a turn. Nothing on screen tells you this, but you can hit X and heal your Pokemon, revive a Pokemon, as you do, and the game will just class that as a turn. It will then, you'll then have to wait for more moves to build back up to do more standard attacks again. But still, it's worth throwing that stuff in, especially at the very beginning of the game when it kind of just hits a pace and it just seems like it's going and going and you're kind of just left thinking, I don't even really know how to do everything just yet. The last thing, speaking of not knowing how to do everything, with the way the game presents it, is the game's scaffolding/construction challenges, where they introduce this idea of the city being under construction, this company that has made all these fancy scaffolding platformer challenges because they think scaffolding is boring, which is great. And so there's all these jumping and platforming challenges around the city. However, at the very beginning of the game, you don't have the ability to get from one strut to another, even though it's super easy to climb up there and then just look at a gap and be like, I feel like you don't have the jump button, I can't get across. You actually have to wait till you unlock the glide ability to get across those gaps easier. You can dodge roll across them as well, but it's not broken because clearly it's intentional, but it's a bit awkward. It's very, I was going to say old school 3D platforming, but it feels a little bit awkward. You can roll across some gaps. The rest of them, you'll have to wait until you get the glide ability. Again, game doesn't tell you, no character says, hey, that looks like something you could glide over. There's nothing like that. Pokemon ZA and the way Pokemon is run is just the weirdest thing. Game Freak and Nintendo are always like 5 steps away from one of the greatest games of all time, and they just keep putting them out with they just miss the mark every year. Some years they miss it a lot more than others with Scarlet and Violet, but ZA is pretty damn accomplished. It's just that it does have these other weird elements that are a bit more rough around the edges. Lastly, a little bit of trivia to send you off into the weekend or the rest of your week with a nice little nugget of something you maybe didn't know before. Did you know, because I didn't, that Hideo Kojima was once asked to make a Matrix game until it was Konami who said no? This comes from ex-Konami employee Chris Bergstresser talking about the reality of the meeting that happened between the Wachowskis and Hideo Kojima, where it was literally Konami's boss at the time that wanted Kojima to focus on Metal Gear Solid instead, so he literally just flat out said no. Bergstresser said the Wachowskis were big fans of Kojima, so Kazumi Katawe, Hideo Kojima, Aki Saito, Saito still works with Kojima, and Bergstresser himself were all at the Konami HQ, and they got a call from the Wachowskis who wanted to come in and meet with Kojima, so they did. The two of them came in with their concept artist, and effectively they said to Kojima, we really want you to do the Matrix game, can you do that? Aki then translated this into Japanese for the boss, Mr. Katawe, and Katawe just looked at them and told them plainly, no. We did still get to enjoy the Matrix Japanese premiere and after party though. Bergstresser just says that at that point, Metal Gear Solid was massive, and Konami's top brass, the Katawe dude, just wanted him to do Metal Gear Solid 2. So we almost got a world where Hideo Kojima made a Matrix game. I do think it's interesting, though, how much Matrix is then in MGS2, where you have literal bullet time in that fight against Olga. The cutscene where Snake faces off against Olga and she fires a couple of bullets towards him. He dodges in slow motion with bullet time, with the rain kind of kissing the bullet as it goes past him. You can tell Kojima was massively influenced by the Matrix anyway, and the various write-ups that have happened around this talking about Matrix and Hideo Kojima and those connections. One of the scrapped characters from Metal Gear Solid 2 was a character called Chinaman, who in himself was going to be this wall-running, like, flippy badass, kind of like Trinity at the end of Matrix 1. So regardless, the DNA is in there, but it's a shame that we didn't get a full-on Matrix game. The license was obviously pushed back by Konami. It went through to the dudes that then would do Enter the Matrix and Path of Neo, which I have soft spots for, but I imagine Hideo Kojima would have done something a little bit more polished. And there you have it. That has been episode 13 of the Just Good Game News. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like the idea of a positive gaming show that focuses on all the different cool happenings in the gaming industry, and you would like to get it earlier and ad-free in a bigger version, head over to patreon.com/Taleford, where you can get the wider Just Good Game show, which is what the news is part of. It's a much bigger version of the edit that I put out on YouTube, alongside a massive community section where I answer everyone's questions and talking points and whatever else is happening in the industry. Which is to say, I've managed to go this entire show without using the word Xbox, considering how much they are in the headlines right now, but we get into all that stuff on the Just Good Game show. Once again, thank you so much for checking this out, and if you're on Patreon and you are on the Helping Hero tier, then stick around, because I'm going to shout all of you out. The rest of you, I will catch you on Discord, I might catch you on the Patreon, or I'll catch you next week. Goodbye. Right then, it's just me and the Helping Heroes. Now, I was going to do a Metal Gear Solid one of these, and I think I'll do that next week when I've got a bit more of a projectable voice, because I really want to do a codec thing, and I want to get on I want to make two heads talking to each other. I want to do all that stuff, literally just because I'm having fun experimenting with video edits and things. For this week, though, let's just chill. I've been down to London. I went to EGX. I've been very ill for the last 2 weeks. It's putting all sorts of things together for the end of the month, and still, doing the Just Good Game show, doing the Just Good Game News. I don't want to miss a show. I love doing it. If I can still talk and be understood, the bung isn't too strong, then I'll keep going. But for this week's shoutouts, let's just chill out and it's autumn, it's cold. I've got a cold. It's almost Halloween. It will be by the time a lot of the video folks see this. Let's just do an autumnal chill shout out. So I'm theming this around Stardew Valley. The autumn leaves are going. Hopefully you're enjoying your particular Halloween season. All the best to you if you're going to be going trick-or-treating. I'm going to be dressing up as Goku. And my son's going to be a little tiny Super Saiyan Vegeta / kinda Gohan, to be honest, both from Dragon Ball, and my wife's going to be going as Videl. So a shout out to all of the people who are going outside trick-or-treating with their kids, and a shout out to all the parents and the caregivers as always, and a massive thank you to all of you for supporting me, I, of course, as some giant crazy car makes a big noise outside. So a huge shout out to Evil Wabbit, Hunter Ferguson, Null, Nova John, Nathan Ellis, Ray Montano, Alex Semenchuk, Soul, Robert Mainprize, Habit, Sean O'Byrne, Lukey Boy Plays Games, King Muttley, and VK's Game Time. Love all of you. Thank you so much for continuing to support myself, the Just Good Game show, the Just Good Game News. Please go check out, if you haven't yet, the Man Who Stares at Goats podcast, if you're a Metal Gear Solid fan, whether you've played it before or not. I am going full spoilers, so if you haven't, I would recommend you play kind of along with me, to be honest. It's in two halves, but see what you think of that. All feedback welcome as to the Man Who Stares at Goats, and get yourselves over to the Discord and vote on what game you would like to me to go through across November. Again, a massive thank you, take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you very soon. Goodbye.